What is up, guys? Pie Muffin here, and we are back with another Trails-related video. So, obviously, you're going to know what this video is about, that I will be going into spoilers on Kiseki. I finished it about, what's today? It's the 6th, so I finished the game about 3 days ago now. It took me 78 hours to beat the game, but yeah, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I'm going to be talking about the ending of the game and different various parts of the game and where we are going to go from here. I originally was going to just do a full-on review, but I started doing it and I was just kind of recapping everything that happened in the game, and I don't really want to do that. So this is more just going to be a video where we talk about the ending of the game and certain parts that led up to the ending and where we could possibly start off with the next game. So this is the warning that where I'm going to start talking about spoilers. So if you have not played the game, which I expect a lot of people haven't, obviously it has not been released in English and is not going to be released in English for at least a year. But considering there is a chance that the next game could come out within the next year in Japanese, I do want to kind of do some, discussion videos about plot-related stuff. But I'll never put, blatant spoilers in the title or the thumbnails, because most people are not going to play this game until it comes out in English. So there we go. So now we're going to go into spoiler territory. So, as a lot of people expected, this was not the final game for the Calvard arc. Kondo had said, he didn't want to make an arc as long as Cold Steel again, but obviously, I guess the way that this arc has gone, we are going to end up with a 4-game arc for the Calvard Republic, which makes sense because in scope it is as big as Erebonia, so I do understand them doing that. I am just surprised that here is where we are getting a cliffhanger ending. So, obviously both Daybreak 1 and 2 had very, solidified endings. We kind of got teases as to what was going to happen next, but there was no real cliffhangers besides the end of Daybreak 2, where we saw Hamilton obviously say that she was going to do something that was not essentially the best, but was something she had to do, which we learn about in Kiseki, has to do with the fact that she basically went against the church and committed a sin that was really unscientific, where she is the reason that Tharbad was able to have water resources, because she essentially took those resources from the future and brought them back into the past. And we learn a lot about the world in this game, about how the world of Zamuria has been reset about 20,000 times. Every time it gets too far to where this cube thing in space decides it needs to be reset, they do what's called a grand reset, which means the timeline goes right back to right after the Great Collapse. So obviously we're in 1209, so if a reset happened now, it would go back to the year 0, and then they would build up from there again. And that has apparently happened 20,000 times. Now, it is hinted at that, and I'm going to get into where I think the next game is going to go here in a bit, but I do want to kind of talk about some of the stuff we learned in this game. So, we do learn that it's very likely that every time there's a reset, usually, obviously there's going to be changes that happen to each reset, not everything happens the exact same way. Maybe a reset happens earlier or later than other times. We learn that based on multiple things. But one thing we did learn is that most likely the same humans are born, obviously unless there's some changes, two characters don't get married, they don't have a kid, that kid's never born, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times there are characters that have had multiple lives, so to speak. So one thing we learn is that Professor Novartis, we learned this in the Grim Garden storyline, he has memories from a different reset, where he was the only disciple of Professor Epstein. Whereas obviously in this reality, Professor Epstein has the 3 disciples, but from the memory he had, we don't know why he has these memories from a different reset, he just does for some reason. But we know that they're from the memories that he has from the reset that he is. We don't know if he's from a different reset or if he's just, this version of Novartis just has that version's memories. But he does have memories that he was the only disciple from Epstein, and he was able to confirm that from what he was doing with the Grim Garden. So we do get some knowledge on that. Another thing we learn is that Reset is seemingly from a different Reset as well, because we find out that she was just found in a capsule, but on that capsule it said Anchorville, which is a city in the Calvard Republic. It said Anchorville, and I think it said it was like 1254 or 1253, which obviously the world is supposed to end in 1210 on this reset. So obviously this reset is not from this timeline. She's from not only the future, but very likely from another reset. She's definitely from the future, that's confirmed. Her being from a different reset is not confirmed yet, but we think she is because obviously the world is supposed to end at a certain point. So that's the main thing I wanted to talk about with that, is that obviously there are characters from different resets that seem to be in this timeline. But the question is, one of the things I'm kind of questioning is, okay, the Grandmaster, Ouroboros, all of that stuff, has there been an Ouroboros in every reset, or is the Grandmaster, at least the Grandmaster and Campanella probably, and maybe McBurn, are they just there permanently? Is wherever they hide out at exempt from these resets? How long has the Grandmaster actually been around? Because if the Grandmaster's been around for most of these 20,000 resets, then it would be insane that she's had this stuff going for that long. We also get a lot of insight that Van's demon may be very similar to McBurn's situation. They name-drop McBurn a ton in this game, which was really funny. I really expect we're going to see him in the next game with how many times they were name-dropping him. The 4 characters that got name-dropped the most were McBurn, Tio, Gaius, and I think there was one more character I really saw name-dropped a lot. I can't remember immediately who they talked about, but yeah, those were at least 3 of the 4 that got talked about a lot. So now let's go to the. I kind of wanted to start with the ending of the game when I first started talking, but obviously we'll get to that now. So the ending of the game, Van and the others are going. They go into the underground presidential bunker underneath Graham Hart's presidential building. They go to the end of it to where we find out that Agnes was being kept there initially. Agnes and Judith's grandmother were seemingly just being held there so they wouldn't interfere with the plan or whatever. But then we find out that they're not there anymore. They went somewhere else. And we know that Agnes and Judith's grandmother and some other characters were working with Hamilton on some kind of plan. There was something that was going on, and because of what Hamilton's been doing, she became a target by not specifically the church, but obviously Nina hired Kevin again. Well, not again, but she hired Kevin to be a heretic hunter again, basically to kill Hamilton because of the sins that she's caused. Messing with time the way it is against the church's laws, or at least the higher-ups in the church, so that was essentially what he was there for. He doesn't get to go off with his plan, however. So we know that Ix, as well as all these masked characters, I think I counted at least 9 of these masked characters. We get to know who a few of them are. It really doesn't matter to go into the specific identities of most of them right now. If I just randomly talk about them later, we might talk about them, but in this moment, I don't think it really matters each identity of them. We'll learn more about that in the next game, obviously. But what I want to get to is that, obviously, Hamilton enlisted the help of Agnes, Judith's grandmother, Rune, which we find out, the biggest surprise of the game for me was that Rune was the White Grendel. I really thought it was going to be Agnes, or I thought it was going to be Sheena Dirk, or something else, but I was not expecting it to be Rune, and Rune seems to be doing this for some reason. It seems like he's almost doing this for Van and Elaine. He's very vague about things. He goes off on them, basically being like, what do you two know about me? And then he dons the white armor and essentially beats the crap out of us. But, so obviously there's something going on with Rune. Maybe something happened after Aramis that he's not telling us, or maybe he's doing this because he wants Van and Elaine to be able to live in a future that doesn't die. Who knows? How long has he been doing this whole plan to betray the president, over this? what I saw someone make a comparison that this is very reminiscent. What happens in this game to Gramhart is very reminiscent to Dieter Krois back in Azure, and I do see the parallels a lot, because obviously Agnes, Gramhart's daughter, betrays him. Not in a malicious way like Maribel did, but obviously she was doing stuff behind his back working with Hamilton. But yeah, so basically, moving on. So you fight Rune. You obviously win the fight in terms of like gameplay, but obviously we basically run out of time. Agnes goes to the top of Tryon Tower with Hamilton's over there with Kevin, trying not to get assassinated, and is being protected by these masked weirdos again. But with Judith's grandma, Agnes goes to the top of the building, and then Nina and Campanella show up. They're just kind of resigned to the fate that they can't stop what's going to happen, and it seems like Agnes uses the original 8 Genesis to do a not temporary, but a limited reset. So in order to save the world, they obviously had to make some changes, because the choices that Gramhart made in this game, sending Hermes into space, us finding out what was actually there was this cube that essentially sounded like an automated device voice that was, kind of hastening the reset timer. Hermes destroyed it. It eventually regenerated itself, and we saw a shadow-like Divine Knight figure that looked very similar to what we fought into Trails into Reverie, what Ishmael Gareen was using as his Divine Knight. It looked very similar to that, but obviously much more powerful, and Hermes got utterly destroyed by it. But yeah, so basically the ending happens. Agnes, I guess, takes the 8 Genesis's powers into her own being, and she turns into a goddess-like figure. Obviously, all the Arkwright Solutions characters and Toa and other characters know Agnes are trying to talk her down for making this decision. Maybe there's something they can do together, but they don't listen. Obviously, Van realizes that when Agnes does her confession earlier in this game, she dressed as a student intentionally so that Van would reject her, because he would see her, as a kid, which she is a kid. So I still don't... I feel bad for Agnes for being rejected, obviously, but I still don't ship that, but that's neither here nor there. That's not really the point here. But she didn't want to leave any regrets behind, so she felt like she needed to confess, even though she needed him to say no, because she was going to make this sacrifice. And what essentially happens is, when the game ends, she flies up into the sky above Tryon Tower. As the reset is about to happen on its own, she kind of overrides it from what it looks like. It seems like she's like Kia in a sense, when Kia was, using her powers as the Zero Child in Azure to, and Zero too, when she had to reset the death of the SSS. This feels very reminiscent of that. So she does a limited reset, and then it just cuts to the credits. Like Cold Steel 3, where Reen loses to Osborne, it cuts to the credits. Or when Joshua leaves at the end of first chapter of Sky, and it just cuts to credits. It's very much a cliffhanger ending in that respect. And then all we see really in the credits is, obviously, we see Ferry and Van kind of running towards Agnes, trying to stop her. And then you see characters and stuff in the world just slowly disappearing. And then eventually you have Van reaching out. He screams Agnes's name, like we heard in that one trailer. And then it just cuts to the full credits. You see a glow in Van's eye, so whatever Agnes is doing, you can tell that Van is going to remember. Because obviously, you would think if she's going to set back time, the memories, and it would be like Daybreak 2, where all the stuff that they learned, only certain characters were able to vaguely remember the stuff that happened during those kind of resets. So I think it's going to be a similar thing here, where probably at first in the next game, Van is going to be the only one to remember. Because you see in the credits, they show a lot of the scenes from Daybreak 1 and 2, where Agnes is obviously with Van and all the other characters, and she is slowly disappearing from those scenes. So what's most likely going to happen is they are going to... I hope they don't go back to... I see a lot of people saying they're probably going to go back to Daybreak 1, like the day that Agnes goes to Van for the request, and then maybe there's like a knock on Van's door, and he's going to expect it to be Agnes, or maybe at that time he doesn't have his memories back and there's just not going to be anyone there. And then it's probably going to be similar. If they do it this way, it's probably going to be similar to Cold Steel 4, where like the prologue and the first act, well, the prologue in Cold Steel 4 was about Lloyd and Estelle's group learning about what's going on in Erebonia, but Act 1 was pretty much getting Reen back. So I could see the next game going one of two ways. Either A, Act 1 is going to be about getting Agnes back. You know, Van is going to slowly get his people together, you know, Ferry, Aaron, Quatcher, Reset, Judith, Burgard, and remind them of what was happening or what had happened. And then they spend the whole first act getting Agnes back, and then we move on from there to whatever the rest of the final Calvard game is going to be. Or B, maybe Agnes doesn't come back until the end of the game, and maybe we just spend the whole game first fixing the timeline, getting back to where we were, and then moving on from there to basically get Agnes back by the end of the game, as well as dealing with the rest of the stuff with Van, because the last two games, both Daybreak 2 and this game, have done nothing when it comes to explaining who Mare is, Van's demon waking up. Although there is a scene in this game where it seems like his demon is going to wake up for a minute when he's fighting, I think, Shizuna in a Connect event. But there's really nothing big when it comes to Van explaining what's going to go on with Van. Because you get another Connect event with Elaine, where she's basically once again trying to be like, hey Van, why can't we be together? I want to be closer to you, all that kind of stuff. And he still can't let her get close, because if that demon ever resurfaces and he hurt or, heavens forbid, killed Elaine or anyone else that he's close to, he would never be able to forgive himself. So he still wants to try and keep people at an arm's reach until things have been settled with his demon. So obviously that needs to happen in this final game as well. You know, we need to understand who Mare is. Mare really doesn't show up a lot in this game. She has one big scene in the end of the garden stuff, but she really doesn't do a lot in this game. But I feel like the next game she's going to have a big role, because obviously Van is probably going to have to work to kind of fix the timeline, and we'll see where things go with that. But yeah, that's mostly what I'm kind of thinking when it comes to the next game, like where it's going to start. It's probably going to start... I really don't want it to start at Daybreak 1. I would love if it starts at, like, if they just go back 4 days, like they go back to right before where Kai started, and then Van is the only one that remembers. He has to remind everybody, because obviously all the stuff that Kevin and Reen did in this game, I don't want that being undone. Like, they both did a lot of stuff in this game, and another big thing for Reen's story was the fact that him and Crow were the only ones who were able to see what was beyond the sky. They went to Basil, they looked through the telescope, and at first they saw a normal sky, but then their memory flashed of their original deaths from the previous timeline, before stuff got changed, and then they saw that there was no stars, there's no sun, there's no moon, it's just a barrier that seems to be kind of walling off Zemuria from whatever's beyond that, which is likely where McBurn is from. Another interesting point was in one of Resette's Connect events, Resette and other characters in her memories were talking in the, like, special ancient tongue that we've not been able to understand. Like, normal characters in Zemuria are not able to understand it. We've seen, obviously, the Septarians talk like this, or Zeit, you know, the spirit beasts. But Reset and her people were talking like that. So at first I thought maybe she's from the Beyond as well, but we know that she's from Anchorville in the future, so we'll obviously get more understanding about that later on. But other than that, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say when it comes to the end of Kai no Kiseki and moving forward. I'm trying to keep my bias on, you know, the relationship stuff, because this game did push a lot of Van Agnes stuff, which I'm just really not into. Like, it's not really my thing. I said before, like, if she was a college student and she was, like, Aaron's age, then, like, okay, sure, if they want that to be the canon relationship, but they put so much focus on the age gap thing, it's just weird to me. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that, but we'll see what the final game does. Now, the last thing to kind of talk about is when will this game come out? Originally, I thought, you know, okay, this game is gonna come out in 2 years, which would drive me nuts to wait 2 years to see how this final game is gonna start. But I went and did some research, and Tokyo Xanadu 2, they never actually announced a release year for it. They just said, Tokyo Xanadu, new project. And we know that they're working on something. So, it's gonna be a flip of the coin in late December, early January, whether we get an announcement for Tokyo Xanadu 2, or whether we get an announcement for Kai no Kiseki 2, or whatever the final Calvard game is going to be called. I don't think it's going to be called Kai no Kiseki 2. I think they'll just come up with another name for the final game of the arc, which is going to be weird, because obviously we have 2 Daybreak games, and then it's going to be Kai no Kiseki, or whatever it's going to be called in English, and then another new title. So it's going to be weird for newer players to be like, okay, there's all these different names, how do I know where to play what and when? But yeah, so if anyone played the game or watched, I know a lot of people just watch streamers play the game with like a Google Translate thing or whatever. Let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know where you think the game is going to start, and let me know what you expect to see in the final game. Obviously, a lot of these masked characters have relevance to the Arc Ride Solutions. It's mostly Arc Ride Solutions characters that they have a relation to. I don't think any masked characters are going to show up for other characters. I saw some people being like, oh, wouldn't it be crazy if there was, like, Leve as one of them, or, you know, just some other character, or, like, Guy Bannings, you know, the crazy stuff like that. Like, it could happen. We don't know how many masked characters there actually are. There's definitely more than 8, because, like I said, I think I counted 9 or 10 in my playthrough, so who knows how many there are actually going to be, but I think those will be the main enemies. I think Ouroboros, because we do meet the Grandmaster in this game, or more specifically, it's mostly the Arc Ride Solutions group that meets the Grandmaster. This is after Agnes disappears, but we have Ren with us, so it's pretty much the entire Arc Ride Solutions crew, and then Ren meet up with the Grandmaster after dealing with Novartis, and they get to have an introduction there where the Grandmaster is basically telling Van, you know, to do what he can, and that we will probably meet again sometime soon, that kind of stuff. So, obviously, she is going to be in Van's future in some regard. But we'll see what happens. So, let me know what you guys think down below. I loved, I guess just quickly say, I had a great time in Kai no Kiseki, definitely one of my more favorite titles in the series. The only issue I had was Act 1. It felt like it dragged on a little too long along with the side content. That's really the only issue I could have with this game. But other than that, it was great. So that's going to be it, guys. Let me know what you guys think down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see you all next time. Have a wonderful day, everyone.